So you finally found your dream home and you're ready to make an offer. How do you decide on an offer price? And besides price, what other terms are you going to be negotiating to make sure you get the best deal? Today's video is all about how to write an offer, and we are starting right now. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm Jessica Genung, a realtor here in the Murrieta, Temecula Valley with Realty One Group Southwest. Just a reminder to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already so you don't miss out on even more great home buying tips. This is the fourth segment in my series, How to Buy a Home. First, we talked about how to hire a great realtor. Second, we talked about how to shop for a mortgage. Third, we talked about how to search for homes. And now we're talking about how to write an offer. So let's get to it. The standard purchase contract that we California realtors use is now 10 pages long, and our association is constantly making changes to it, so it can seem quite overwhelming. But basically, when making an offer, it boils down to three main things that we're going to be negotiating. Number one is price. Number two is timeline and contingencies. Number three is possession. I'm going to be explaining each one of these. The highest priced offer is not always the best offer. The seller will be taking into account all of the terms in the offer. Keep in mind that every home purchase transaction is unique, but in this video, just to try to keep it simple, I am going to be discussing a typical transaction, but it is not unusual for transactions to be quite complicated, so it is of vital importance that you work with a very experienced and knowledgeable agent first and foremost. This video, it's just a basic overview. The first thing we're going to be negotiating is price. How much should you offer for the home? Now that you've identified the home you wish to purchase, your awesome agent is going to put together what we call a comparative market analysis for the home. They will be analyzing similar homes that have recently sold and comparing them to the one you wish to purchase. They will come up with their opinion on how much they think the home is worth, but that is not where it ends. The single most important factor when trying to decide on how much to offer is first to find out if you have any competition. If there are not other offers on the property, that typically means that there might be some negotiating room. If the home has been on the market for, let's say, a month or more, that can often give the buyer some leverage as well. If there are multiple offers on the property, on the other hand, your agent is going to need to find out some more information if they can. How many offers are there? Are we over list price at this point? Are the other offers contingent upon those buyers selling their existing home before they can close on the new home? This type of contingency can put that offer at a disadvantage compared to a non-contingent offer. Other questions such as, does the seller like the other offers that they've seen, or do they want to see more? I always try to get this kind of information for my clients from the listing agent. They do not have to provide this information, but I do my best to get a sense of the situation, and normally they will give you some information. A quick side note about making an offer on a property that has multiple offers. Sometimes buyers don't want to go after this type of property because they don't want to get into a bidding war. But I would encourage you to still consider this property. Typically, a house gets multiple offers not because the buyers are trying to overpay, but because it's priced very well, maybe even under market, or it's a particularly special home with great features or location or some kind of wow factor. Your experienced and knowledgeable agent should be very comfortable negotiating in a multiple offer situation. Along with deciding on an offer price, you will also be deciding with the help of your lender if you're going to be asking for the seller to pay some of your closing costs. About a half of the transactions that I've done recently, the buyers have been able to receive closing cost assistance from the sellers. Sellers, they do not love to pay for closing costs, but if they like the overall offer, they often will. Lastly, you'll be deciding how much earnest money deposit to put down. The earnest money deposit you put down, it's a good faith gesture that you're serious about buying the home. In my market, it's typically about 1%. You can make that deposit higher if you like to sweeten the deal for the seller. Maybe you're in a multiple offer situation. Your earnest money deposit is held in an escrow account, and if everything goes the way that it's supposed to and you follow through on the purchase of the property, the earnest money deposit, it gets folded into your closing costs. But you will need to be careful and read your contract, because there are some ways that you can lose your earnest money deposit if you don't follow through with the purchase. So make sure that your agent builds in these contingencies into your contract so that you can get your earnest money back. Next, I'm going to tell you about some of these contingencies in our second section. Number 2, timelines and contingencies. In the purchase contract, you are going to be telling the seller when you plan to close on the home. Again, it's very important here to understand as much about the seller's situation as possible. Have they already maybe moved out of their home and they're paying 2 mortgages? So in this case, they would want it sold ASAP. A buyer that is agreeable to the seller's timeline is a great way to sweeten your offer without paying a higher price. Typical closing timeline is 30 days. Around 30 days. If the seller wants a quicker closing, you could try for a 21 to 25 day closing to sweeten the offer, or maybe they need more time to get things together so they have more time to move. You could offer them a 60-day close or more. Next, we're going to be talking about the timeline of your contingencies. A contingency is a provision in the contract that makes the contract null and void if a certain event were to occur. Think of it as an escape clause. There are many types of contingencies, but the main ones I'm going to discuss are the inspection contingency, the appraisal contingency, and the financing contingency. The purchase agreement has default timelines, but they can be modified as needed. The inspection and the appraisal contingencies, they default to 17 days, and the loan contingency, it defaults to 21 days. So to sweeten the deal for a seller, like in a multiple offer situation, you could shorten these contingencies if you're comfortable with that, or even waive some of them altogether with caution. For example, a seller would almost always prefer a 10-day inspection period contingency instead of the default 17 days. If any issues arise during the inspection period and you decide not to go through with the purchase, you can cancel. As long as these contingencies remain in place, the buyer can cancel the transaction, and their earnest money deposit they can get back. One side note on contingencies that a lot of people don't understand is that in order for contingencies to be removed, it has to be done so in writing. Just because the time period has lapsed doesn't mean that the contingency is no longer in place. People think that it expires. But if your contingencies, they do lapse, the seller can begin the process to cancel the transaction. Number 3, possession. When will you be getting the keys and taking possession of your new home? The day that we've all been waiting for. The contract defaults to possession passing to the buyer at 6 p.m. on the day that escrow closes. This is what typically happens, but in some cases, the seller needs a little bit more time to move. Sometimes they request close of escrow plus 3 days. That can be common. Sometimes they request even more time. If both parties agree that the seller can remain in possession past the close of escrow, so for example, let's say the seller wants a week to close on their next purchase and they want another week so they can take time to move, then an addendum will be added to the purchase contract and additional terms will be negotiated, such as, is the seller going to be paying the buyer rent for them to stay past the closing date? Another instance would be when a tenant is going to be remaining in possession. This is another type of addendum that can be added to negotiate possession. But regardless of when the seller actually vacates the property, our California purchase contract automatically defaults to the seller giving the keys to the buyer at the close of escrow. This is the keys that we're talking about, even if the seller is going to be doing a rent back and staying in possession for a little while. A lot of agents, they don't know those kind of precise details, but that is how the contract is written as of now. If you hung in there with me this long, you are awesome, and I hope that you feel more informed when it comes time for you to make an offer on a home. This was step 4 out of 8 in my series on how to buy a home, so we are halfway through. If you would like a copy of my roadmap, all of the 8 steps on how to buy a home, I have included a link down in the description that you can enter in your email address, and I will send you over all the 8 steps of my roadmap and you can review those. As always, don't forget to subscribe, and thanks so much for watching my video. Bye.